Hello students and welcome in the online session of class 9th science chapter 10 gravitation. This is the second video of the lesson. Let us see what topics will be covered today. Today we will find out the gravitational force between light and heavy objects, the gravitation and Newton's third law of motion, Kepler's laws of planetary motion and Newton's inverse square law. So let's start first with the gravitational force between light and heavy objects. In yesterday's video, we have seen that gravitational force is the force of attraction between any two objects in the universe. And the formula was F is equal to G m1 m2 upon r2, where m1 is the mass of the first body, m2 is the mass of the second body in which the force of attraction is present, r is the distance between the first and the second body, and g is the gravitational constant. So this is the formula for finding the gravitational force between any two objects present in the universe. Now we have to study three cases here. The first one is when the two bodies are of 1 kg mass each. Okay, that means the first body is also of 1 kg and the second body is also of 1 kg, and they are kept at a distance of 1 meter. Okay, so this is the first case, that when the two bodies of mass 1 kg each are 1 meter apart. So what is given here students? M1 and M2, two bodies are there and the mass of both of them is 1 kg. So M1 and M2 is equal to 1 kg. Distance between them is 1 meter. Now, the value of G is known to everyone. It is 6.67 into 10 raised to minus 11 Newton meter square upon kg square. This is the unit of gravitational constant. Now, we have to put the values in the same formula. That is the formula of finding the gravitational force. So, in place of G, we will put the value 6.67 into 10 raised to minus 11. In place of M1, we will put 1. In place of M2, we will put 1. And in case of R, it is also 1 meter, so 1 square. Now, 1 into 1 will be 1. So, 1 will be cancelled out, right? And the remaining here will be 6.67 into 10 raised to minus 11 Newton. Now, this is the force. That means when the two bodies are of 1 kg and if they are separated by a distance of 1 meter, then the gravitational force between them will be equal to 6.67 into 10 raised to minus 11 Newton. That means F is equal to G, which we have already done yesterday. Now, this value is very small value. Hence, the two bodies will pull each other with this force, right? This is the force of attraction between the two bodies which are of 1 kg each. So, both of them will pull each other but cannot move towards each other. There will be no acceleration in both the bodies because this force is very weak force. It is very less, and this force cannot overcome the friction which is present between the two bodies and the ground, right? The force of attraction between them should overcome the friction which is present between the body 1 and the ground and body 2 and the ground. Okay, so both the bodies are kept on the ground, so they have friction also with the ground. So this force is very small and this force cannot overcome the friction. So as the force is very weak, so both of them are pulling each other but none of them will move from their place. So we can say that this force of attraction is too weak to show any kind of acceleration in the bodies. Fine. So this is the first case. Now let us move on to the second case, when a body of 1 kg is held on the surface of the earth. What is the case now? That one of the body is of 1 kg and the another body is earth, right? This is the situation that this is suppose the earth, and a body of 1 kg mass is kept on the earth, right? This blue color shows this is the body of 1 kg and the second body is earth, because this 1 kg body is on the present on the surface of the earth. Now this is the center of the earth. Okay, so now m1 will be 1 kg because this body is of 1 kg mass. M2 body means the second body is earth, because earth is pulling this body towards itself, right? So m2 is the mass of the earth, and mass of the earth is 6 into 10 raised to 24 kilograms. This you have to learn the value, right? Mass of the earth is 6 into 10 raised to 24 kgs. Now, what is r in this case? R means the distance between the two bodies. Now, the one body is this, which is having a mass of 1 kg, and the other body is the earth. So, what is the distance between them? Is the distance will be measured from the center of the earth to the center of this body, right? So, this is, now you can see here, this is the radius of the earth, right? This distance is nothing but the radius of the earth. So, the radius of the earth is 6400 kilometers. You can write it in this format: 6.4 into 10 raised to 3. If we put a point after 6, so 3 digits are remaining, so that means 10 raised to the power 3. So it can be written in this format also: 6.4 into 10 raised to 3 kilometers. And if we convert it into meters, then it comes to 6.4 into 10 raised to 6, because we will multiply by 1000. 1 kilometer is equals to 1000 meters. Okay, so then this will become 10 raised to the power 6 meters. Now putting the values into the same formula of finding the force. Force is equal to G m1 m2 upon r2. So G value is known to us: 6.67 into 10 raised to minus 11. What is the mass of first body? It is 1 kg. What is the mass of another body, that is the earth? It is 6 into 10 raised to 24 upon r square. Now r is the distance of the body from the center of the earth. That means it is the radius of the earth, and it is 6.4 into 10 raised to 6 meters. Okay, distance has to be taken in meters. Now this is square of this value. So when it will be solved, we'll find that the value comes to 9.8 Newton. Okay, after solving this equation, the answer comes 9.8 Newton. So this is the force which is exerted by the earth on the body which is present on the surface of the earth, which is of 1 kg mass, right? So it means earth exerts a gravitational force of 9.8 Newton on a body of mass 1 kg which is kept on the surface of the earth. And this is the reason that whenever a body is dropped from a height, it falls on the earth, because this 9.8 Newton is a very huge amount of force. It's a very large force which is applicable to all the bodies which are present on the earth. And that's why anything which is dropped from a height, it always falls towards the earth, because earth pulls everything with a force of 9.8 Newton. Fine. So this is the second case. Now third case is when both the bodies are very heavy, right? In first case, what we have seen, that both the bodies are very lightweight, both are of 1 kg each. Then in second case, you have seen that there is one light body and one heavy body. Okay, light body is of 1 kg and heavy one is the earth. Now in the third case, both the bodies are very heavy. Then what will be the force of attraction between them? So suppose we are finding the force of gravitation between the earth and the moon revolves around the earth. So mass of the earth, okay, so first body is the earth. So mass of the earth, that is m1, is 6 into 10 raised to 24 kg. Then mass of the moon is, which is the second body, m2, it is 7.4 multiplied by 10 raised to 22 kg. Okay, in earth it is 10 raised to 24 kg, here it is 10 raised to 22 kg. This is the weight or the mass of the moon. Now radius between earth and the moon, so this is suppose earth and this is suppose moon. Now the force of attraction will be in between these two, and the distance by which they are separated is this r distance. And what is this distance now? This distance is the radius between earth and the moon, the distance between earth and the moon, and this is equal to 3.84 multiplied by 10 raised to the power 5 kilometers. Okay, this is the distance between earth and the moon. And if you convert it in meters, then you will multiply with 1000, so 10 raised to 5 will become 10 raised to 8. So it comes to 3.84 into 10 raised to 8 meters. Now the value of G is the same, putting the values in the same formula. Now 6.67 into 10 raised to minus 11 multiply by m1 is 6 into 10 raised to 24. So we have put the value here, multiply by m2 is the mass of the moon, that is 7.4 into 10 raised to 22, and upon r square. So r is the distance between earth and moon, and this value is 3.84 into 10 raised to the power 8 and its square. After solving this, the answer comes to 2.01 multiplied by 10 raised to 20 newtons. And this is also a very large amount of force, right? 2.01 multiplied by 10 raised to the power 20 means 20 zeros will be present in front of it. So it's a very large amount of force. So it is this large force which is exerted by Earth on the moon. Earth is exerting this much gravitational pull on the moon, and this is the reason that moon revolves around the earth and does not go anywhere else in the space, right? So it makes the moon revolving around the earth because earth pulls the moon with a very large force. More heavy the body is, more will be the gravitational pull, right? Because this F is directly proportional to the mass of the body. If the mass of the body is more, the gravitational force will be more. Fine. Now next topic is gravitation and Newton's third law of motion. There is a relation between gravitation and Newton's third law of motion. No doubt both are given by Newton. Third law is also given by Newton, and gravitational force law is also given by Newton. But there is a relationship among them. So let's see what is the relation. So we all know that Newton has given the third law of motion, and it is that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Okay. So related to this, let us see one example that when an apple falls on the earth, this is due to the gravitational pull of the earth, right? Whenever an apple falls from the tree, it always comes down on the earth because earth is pulling the apple towards it. Now, as a reaction, so this is the action now, right? Earth has done the action. Now, in reaction to this, apple also exerts an equal force of attraction on the earth. Fine. So suppose here is the apple, the man is holding the apple and it is falling down. So why it is falling down? It is falling down due to the force exerted by earth on the ball. Suppose here it's a ball or an apple, whatever you consider it. So why it is falling down? Due to the force applied by the earth. Okay. And now earth is also pulled towards this object. Why? Because this object, whether it's an apple or a ball, it is also applying a force on the earth, because according to Newton's third law of motion, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So whenever an apple falls down or a ball falls down, so that ball is also applying, or the apple is also applying an equal force of attraction on the earth, but it is in opposite direction. Now here you can see the directions are opposite. Earth is pulling towards this direction and apple or the ball is pulling in this direction. So both the directions are opposite to each other. Fine. But why the earth is not seen rising towards an apple? The apple is accelerated towards the earth. The apple moves towards the earth. But why the earth is not moving towards the apple, right? So to find this answer, okay, to find this answer, now we have to connect the force of gravitation with Newton's third law of motion. Okay, and firstly we have to start from Newton's second law of motion. Okay, so what we are finding out that apple and earth both are exerting equal and opposite forces on each other. Then apple moves towards the earth, but why the earth is not seen moving towards the apple? So the reason comes from Newton's second law of motion. Now, according to Newton's second law, force is equal to mass into acceleration. F is equals to ma. You have already studied, right? Now from this formula, if we find the value of acceleration, so acceleration comes to force upon mass, right? From this formula, if we change it, so how to find acceleration from this formula? What we have to do, we have to shift this m towards this side. So a is equal to f by m. Now, see acceleration and here F upon m, right? Force upon mass. So you can see that acceleration and mass both are inversely proportional to each other. One is in numerator, other one is in denominator form. So they are inversely proportional to each other. Inversely means if mass increases, acceleration decreases. If mass decreases, acceleration increases, right? So mass of the earth is too large. If mass is very large, then what will happen, students? Acceleration will be very, very, very less, right? So mass of the earth is too large compared to the mass of an apple, right? So therefore, acceleration produced in earth is too small to be seen. Earth moves a little bit, but because the mass of the earth is very large, the acceleration produced cannot be seen, or the acceleration will be produced very, very, very less, right? Because mass and acceleration has inverse relation. If mass is more, acceleration will be less. And this is the reason why the apple seems to be moving towards the earth, but the earth does not seems to be moving towards the apple. Fine, both are applying equal and opposite force of attraction on each other, but apple moves towards the earth because its mass is less, so acceleration produced in the apple will be more. But why earth is not seen to be moving towards the apple? Because mass of the earth is very large, and so acceleration produced is very, very less, right? So I hope this relation is clear to each and every one of you. Now let's move on to the next slide and see Kepler's laws of planetary motion. We all know that planets move around the sun, and planets also move in elliptical orbits. They have their own orbits in which they are moving, and they also do not fall down or do not go in any other direction, just revolve around the sun. This is also because of the gravitational force provided by the sun. Every body attracts the other body in the universe, and this force of attraction is the gravitational force. So sun also has its own gravitational force, and by which it attracts the planets towards it. So, this was studied by the scientist Kepler, and he gave three different laws of planetary motion. He gave no derivation, no explanation about it, but just he has given three laws. And these laws were later on, described by Newton. But he gave them, so Kepler's laws of planetary motion is the heading of this. And so let us start with the first law given by Kepler under the heading Kepler's first law. So, according to this law, every planet revolves around the sun in an elliptical orbit, right? Elliptical shape is like an oval shape, right? Egg shape is the elliptical orbit, elliptical shape. So every planet, it moves around the sun in an elliptical orbit. Here you can see, so this line which is shown here, this is the elliptical orbit. Actually there is no such line in the space, but for our understanding, for our study, we draw such type of elliptical orbits. So every planet moves around the sun in elliptical orbits with the sun situated at any one of the foci of the eclipse, right? So see, uh, this one is one of the focus line, and this one is of the another focus line, right? Foci of the elliptical orbit. Okay, here it is not eclipse, it is elliptical orbit here. So this is the elliptical orbit which is formed, and there are two focus lines present in between, right? So this one is the, this side you can see that this line is the bigger one than this one. Okay, horizontal line is more larger, bigger than the vertical line. So this, which one is of more length, is called as the major focus line, major focus, and this one which is smaller is the minor focus line. So sun may be situated on any one of the focus lines. Sun can be on the minor line also, sun can be on the major line also. Okay, so we are considering that sun is present on the major focus line, present in between the elliptical orbit. Okay, so every planet moves around the sun in an elliptical orbit, and sun is situated at any one of the focus line. Sun can be present on the major focus line, or sun can be present on the minor focus line also, right? So this horizontal line which is more in length is the major focus, and the one which is has less length, it is the minor focus line. So now we will consider in all the three laws that the sun is present on the major focus line in the elliptical orbit, right? So this is the first law. Now, second law is that, so Kepler's second law, this is the diagram here. We'll try to understand with the diagram here. So in this elliptical orbit of the planet, right? So we have studied according to the first law that every planet moves in the elliptical orbit. Now, the line joining the center of the planet, okay, so planet is here. Okay, planet can be on P1 position, planet can be on P2 position. These are the different positions of the planet as the planet moves. then planet can be at P3 position, it can be at P4 position, right? So we are talking about these four positions in the elliptical orbit. So the line joining the center of the planet, this one, to the center of the sun. Okay, so line which is joining the planet and the sun, this one, this line. It sweeps equal areas in equal intervals of time, right? That means the planet covers equal distance in equal intervals of time while moving around the sun. Okay, what is Kepler's second law? That the line joining the center of the planet and the sun sweeps equal distance or equal areas in equal intervals of time. Fine. So in equal time, the planet will cover equal areas around the sun. Now here, with the help of these diagrams, we will try to understand this. Now what does it mean? That it means that velocity is equal to area traced upon time. Fine. So velocity is what? Velocity is distance upon time. So here velocity will be area traced. Okay, here it is written area 1 and area 2. So this is the distance covered by the planet. So what is the velocity in this case? Area which is traced upon time. Now if the time of travel of the planet from P1 to P2. Okay, now just trace out the points here. This is P1 point and this is P2 point, right? So what we are saying, that the time of travel, time taken by the planet to move from P1 point to P2 point is same as that when it moves from point 3 P3 to P4, right? Time taken by the planet to move from P1 to P2 and P3 to P4 is the same. If this is same, that time taken is same, then clearly shows that area O, P1 and P2, right? This is central position as O. So O, P1 and P2, this area, and O, P3 and P4 means area number 1 and area number 2. They are equal. These areas are equal. This clearly shows that equal distance is covered in equal intervals of time. Okay, but now you can see here that P3 arc, right? This is the arc. P3, P4 and P1, P2. This is one arc and this is another arc. Now by the diagram you can see that this arc made by P3, P4, this one arc is smaller than P1, P2. You can see here that this one arc is smaller than the another arc. So what does this shows then, right? So this shows that the speed of the planet is greater when it is closer to the sun. We are saying that these areas are same. Areas are same. So if areas are same, but this arc looks smaller than this arc, then it means that the speed of the planet is greater when it is closer to the sun. You can see this area number 1. So this side, the distance between the planet and the sun is less, and here the distance of the planet from the sun is more. So speed of the planet is greater when it is closer to the sun. When the planet is close to the sun, it will move faster and it will cover this much area, right? So when the planet is farther from the sun, then its speed will be less, and then it covers this much arc only, and this is the reason why area 1 is equal to area 2. That means equal areas are covered in equal intervals of time by the planets. Okay, so this is the example. Fine. So what we have done in this example, that P1 to P2 and P3 to P4. When the planet moves, the area covered is the same. And if area covered is the same, that means equal distances are covered in equal intervals of time. But if you look at the arcs, P3, P4 arc is smaller than P1, P2 arc. And this shows that the speed of the planet is greater when it is closer to the sun, and when the planet is farther away from the sun, then the speed is less. Okay, means this side the planet will move faster, and this side the planet is going slowly because it is farther from the sun. Okay, so finally what is the conclusion? That a planet does not move around the sun with the constant speed, right? That means the planet is changing its speed. When it is close to the sun, it will move faster. When it is away from the sun, it will move slowly. So the planet does not move with the constant speed. So this law was given by Kepler, right? Now in the third law, Kepler's third law, now see, the square of time period of revolution of a planet, right? Revolution means completing one round around the sun. That is called as revolution. And time period means the time taken to complete one revolution around the sun. Okay? Time taken to complete one revolution around the sun is given by capital T. And R is the semi-major axis, right? Semi-major axis means, as we have seen, that this is the major axis, this is the elliptical orbit, and this is the major axis, right? So semi-major means half, right? So at the half point sun is present, suppose, and planet is here. So R is what? R is the mean distance of planet from the sun, right? So what is R? R is the distance between the sun and the planet. So according to Kepler's third law, the relation between time period and the distance between planet and the sun is T square is directly proportional to cube of R. Square of T is directly proportional to cube of R. That means time square of the time period is directly proportional to thrice the distance between the planet and the sun. T2 is directly proportional to R3, or you can say R3 is directly proportional to T square, right? Now if we have to remove this proportionality sign, we have to use a constant here. We will write here constant. So what will happen? This T2, if it is shifted this side, means R cube upon T square is a constant value and which does not change for any planet, right? Means R3 upon R2 is a constant value and it does not change for a planet. So this law means that when the size of the elliptical orbit of the planet is large, time period of revolution of the planet is more. Okay, that means what? That if the distance between the planet and the sun is more, right? This is the direct relation. That R is what? Distance between the planet and the sun. If this is more, then time period means time taken to complete one revolution will be more. Okay, T is directly proportional to R. If the distance R means distance between the planet and the sun is more, then time period will also be more. Means time taken to complete one revolution will be more. If distance between planet and sun is less, then time taken to complete one revolution will also be less. So this is the Kepler's third law. So you have to remember T square is directly proportional to R3 and T2 upon R3 or R3 upon T2 is a constant value. Okay, so this is Kepler's third law. Now, next is Newton's inverse square rule. Okay, so this is given by Newton. So Newton stated that gravitational force F between any two bodies is inversely proportional to the square of the distance. So this value is founded from the law of gravitation only. F is equal to G m1 m2 upon r2. So what we are directly finding the relation between force and the distance present between the two bodies. So force is inversely proportional to 1 upon r square. Okay, this has come from the law of gravitation only. We have removed G m1 m2 from here and directly F and R relation is shown. So it is inversely proportional. If one increases, other one decreases. If you double the distance, okay, double the distance means R raised to the power 4, right? So force will reduce to 1/4 times, because if R is increasing, F will decrease. Okay, so this is known as inverse square rule. This rule implies that when distance between the two bodies is double, if we are doubling the distance, if this distance is doubled and already it is in square form, so if you will double, that means it will be 4 times now. So what will happen to the gravitational force? Gravitational force will reduce 4 times. Okay, so gravitational force will become 1/4. Why for 1/4? Because distance has increased, doubled. Doubled means it is already r square in the formula, so it will become 4 times. Okay, so force will also reduce by 1/4. Now, ellipticity of planets around the sun is small, right? The orbits which we are saying that they are elliptical in nature, but actually they are not very elliptical. That ellipticity is very small, very less elliptical shape is there. So, for our convenience, what we assume that orbits of the planets they are circular orbits. So, for study, it is considered that planets move in circular orbits. Actually, they are elliptical, but not that much. So, we can consider that the orbits are circular. The force required to maintain the planet in a circular orbit is the centripetal force. Now you have already studied that if something has to move in a circular path, then a central force has to be required which pulls the body towards itself, and then only the body will move in a circular path. So here the force is provided by the gravitational pull. So, a central seeking force is always required for the movement in circular orbit, and that force is called the centripetal force. And this centripetal force, in case of planets, is provided by the sun. Sun provides the gravitational pull against the planet. And if moon is revolving around the earth, then what happens? This centripetal force or the gravitational pull is provided by the earth. Okay. Now, let us find out how this inverse square rule is formed. Okay, derivation of this. So firstly we will see that if m is the mass of the planet, right? We are talking about planets moving around the sun. So if m is the mass of the planet and the planet is moving with a speed of v. Okay, m is the mass, v is the speed of the planet, and the planet is moving in a circular orbit, and the radius of this orbit is r, right? So r is what? Radius of the circular orbit. I repeat again, m is the mass of the planet, v is the speed of the planet, and r is the distance. Okay, r is the distance of sun and planet, or you can say that r is the radius of the circular orbit, right? R is the radius of the circular orbit around the sun. Then centripetal force will be given by, then what is the value of centripetal force? The formula of centripetal force is F is equal to mv square upon r. Please learn this formula, right? F is equal to mv square upon r. M is the mass of the planet, V is the speed of the planet, and R is the radius of the circular orbit. So centripetal force is equal to mv square upon r. Now, from here, if we suppose have to put the value of V, mv square. Now we have to put the value of V here. So from where we will find the value of V? Now we know that speed is equal to distance upon time, right? Speed is equal to distance upon time. And what will be the formula for t now? T will be equal to d upon s. T will be equal to, now this s will come there and t will go there. So t is equal to d by s, right? So you can write that t means time period is equal to distance covered in one revolution upon the speed. Fine. Now put the values. So distance covered in one revolution means 2 pi r because it's a circular orbit. So circumference of the circle is 2 pi r. So 2 pi r is the distance covered upon speed. Speed is what? V. Fine. Now here we can find V. So V is equal to 2 pi r upon T. 2 pi r upon T. Shift this V that side and T that side. So V is equal to 2 pi r upon T. Okay, now put this value in this first equation. So putting the value now, what is the equation? See, m remains the same, r remains the same. Only we have put the value of v. So v is equal to 2 pi r upon t, and v square it is. So we have to put a square at this place, right? Now, it is a square, so just open it up. Now see, when 2 square, so it will become 4 pi square. So pi square is written, right? 4 pi square and then m. Okay, and then r is written. See, this one r will be cut with one r, so one only r will remain here. Fine, it will become r square, and if you cut from this, so only one r will remain here. So 4 pi square m r upon t square. This square is for the whole value, so t is also square here, right? So I think this step is clear to all. If you see properly, you'll come to know what has been done. Now what we have to do, now f is written on the left side and this whole term is on the right side. Now on the right side, we have to multiply and divide by r square. Numerator will be multiplied by r square and denominators will also be multiplied by r square. So see, here it is 1r. So when you will multiply by r square, it will become r cube. And downside there is no r, so r square will come here because on the upper side and lower side both we have multiplied by r square, right? Now is the main thing. Now this is the equation number 3 now, after dividing and multiplying by r square. Now what we have to do, now this term, just observe this term, r cube upon t square. This just you have studied, Kepler's third law, right? R square upon t square is equal to constant. So this value is a constant now. It's a constant, that means its value will not change, so we'll remove it. Now here you will see 4 pi square m. What is 4 pi square m? This is also constant for a planet because mass of a planet is always constant. 4 is a constant value, pi is a constant value. Now mass of the planet, and mass of the planet is always constant. Mass of the planet is not changing, right? So this whole term is also a constant value. It does not change. So what is remaining now, children? F and in the lower side r square, right? So it comes to be that F is equal to constant upon r square. This everything is constant now. So F is equal to constant upon r square, means F is equal to or directly proportional to 1 upon r square. So this is the inverse square rule, how it is derived. Okay. So there's no much. If you read twice, you'll come to know you have to start with the centripetal force, put the value of V. From where the value of we will come from the value of speed is equal to distance upon time, then time value we will find, and from here V value can be finded out. Put the values, open the squares, just put it and find out which terms are constant, and you will come to know that every constant will be removed and only F directly proportional to 1 upon r square will be remain here. So this is the inverse square rule. Okay, so gravitational force between the sun and the planet is inversely proportional to the square of the distance between the centers. So all the types of attractive forces, they are inversely proportional to the square of the distance present between the two bodies, and this is known as the inverse square rule. If the distance increases, force decreases. If the distance decrease, force increase. Inverse, right? So this is a part of universal law of gravitation, right? This is also a part of universal law of gravitation, because what is universal law of gravitation? F is equal to g m1 m2 upon r square. So there also it is seen that F is inversely proportional to r square. So inverse square rule is a part of universal law of gravitation. Okay, I hope this is clear to all. Now, let's come to the summary what we have done today. So, we have seen the gravitational force between the light objects and heavy objects. Three cases we have studied. Then gravitation and Newton's third law of motion. What is the relation? Then Kepler's laws and Newton's inverse square law. Okay. I hope the concepts are clear. If not, just go through your textbooks, read the lesson from your NCRT books, and always stay home, stay safe, and keep learning.